Guys, I'm really excited about today's guest. He's one of the leaders of one of my favorite podcasts for men, and that's Ryan Michler from Order of Man. He's going to be on today's show. You know, Ryan has really had his finger on the pulse of what it means to be a man. He's going to talk about some of his failures and how he's overcome those, and he's going to give us some advice for how we can become the men we were meant to be.
You're a man. You want to become a better one. You want to level up. That's nobody's task but your own. This is your starting line. This is your boot camp. It starts now. Welcome to the Manlihood ManCast with Josh Hatcher.
Gentlemen, welcome to the Manlihood ManCast. I'm your host, Josh Hatcher. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and being a part of what we're doing here at Manlihood. Hey, listen, I want to encourage you, if you want to invest in what we're doing here at Manlihood, and if you are a brand that serves men and you want to partner together, we've got an opportunity. Season 8 is going to be coming up and launching in the fall. If you want to sponsor Manlihood and you want to get your brand, your messaging in front of thousands of men, let me know, because we can make it happen. So we can do it affordably too. We're not going to charge you an arm and a leg. I've got some packages for any budget. So let me know and we'll get you involved with that. Just get in touch with me, manlihood.com@gmail.com, and I'll send you out my packages. We'll talk about what your budget is. Let's get you set up and get your message in front of these amazing listeners. So let's make that connection. Let's make it happen. Guys, today's guest, Ryan Michler, is the leader of the movement Order of Man. You've probably heard his podcast. He's interviewed some of the elite, the cream of the crop, some of the best men out there. And he produces 3 episodes a week. He's got an amazing Facebook group, an amazing presence on the internet where he's making a difference and helping to reclaim what it means to be a man, inspiring millions of men to become better. So without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Ryan Michler. Ryan Michler, great to have you on the Manlihood ManCast today. How you doing?
Hey, good, man. How are you? Good to see you, Josh. It's been a long time in the works. Glad we could make it happen.
Yeah, I always I credit you for the birth of the podcast because, you know, I started my blog a little before you started your stuff, and I kind of kept having that decision paralysis. And I remember you just saying something to the effect of start before you're ready. And I'm like, all right, well, let's do this. So when I first started the podcast, I had no idea what I was doing, but I started.
Good.
And
yeah.
So I appreciate that advice.
I think that's what holds a lot of guys back is they have these ideas and thoughts. They want to ask for a raise or a promotion or start a business or ask a woman on a date or any number of things they could be aspirational to. And they're sitting on their asses. I don't really know what they're waiting for, you know, maybe for the time to be right, but I can't think of a better time than right now.
Yeah, exactly. And what's the worst that could happen? You make a podcast that nobody's listening to yet, or you hear the word no, you know, like,
I don't even really yeah, that could happen. And it's not even that bad, you know? And I think that's the point you're making is like, so I just don't think unless you're doing brain surgery or, you know, something dumb that might actually get you killed, there's really a whole lot of risk in going out and trying new things and experimenting and pursuing your dreams and desires.
Yeah. So again, thank you for that encouragement. I think it's kind of cool to be at this place. And over the years, we've tried to connect and get you on the show, and you've been busy or I've been busy, or and then I think up until just recently, I know there was another kind of factor going on in your life that I didn't know it was going on yet because you hadn't really talked about it publicly. And I remember reaching out and you're like, now's not a good time. And then a couple weeks later, the crap hit the fan, so to speak. I know it's kind of a vulnerable topic to jump into right off the bat, but maybe you could tell me a little bit about your story there and what's been happening.
Yeah, I mean, what specifically do you want to know about? I mean, I'm an open book. I'm happy to share whatever you want. And vulnerability, I don't really buy into that. I don't feel vulnerable. Like there's no risk associated with me telling the truth. And that's really what, people use the word vulnerability. I don't like that word. It's just being humble. It's being honest. Vulnerability is susceptibility to risk. I'm not susceptible to risk by sharing my own personal story. So I choose not to use that word. I know the spirit of which you're intending it. But yeah, I think there's this movement in society of being soft and being vulnerable and maybe even being effeminate. And I just don't think that's the direction that I want to steer the conversation, because that's where society takes it. But if we're talking about honesty and truth and humility, sure, we can talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I intend to. I don't like the word either, so it just kind of was the word that kind of popped in my head as I was putting it out, but I don't usually use that word to describe it. Authenticity or being honest, being truthful. But I guess let's go to this place. A few months ago, you shared a post, and there was a risk to you in sharing it because you've built this movement, the Order of Man movement, where you're helping men become, better husbands, better fathers, better leaders, and you had some issues in your own life that were keeping you from being the best that you could be in those areas, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair when you say there was a risk. And I guess I don't see the risk now because I'm on the tail end of it. I'm on the other side of it. But when I talked about my alcohol abuse, when I talked about the breakdown of my marriage and subsequent divorce, I really did believe when I was sharing it for the first time that this could be over. Order of Man could be over. Everything that I've worked to build over the past 8-9 years could just erode right here in the next couple of days. And I had some pushback. Sure, some people said it's hypocritical, and some people lost a lot of faith. And honestly, that's understandable. I get it. But I also noticed that there was a lot of people around me already who rallied behind me and supported me. And then there was also a lot of people who had been sitting on the fence, but hadn't really involved themselves or jumped into what we're doing. And they did after I started to be honest about the situation I was dealing with, because they saw me not as some immortal being that they put on some weird pedestal I don't belong, but they saw me as a relatable human, one that is very similar to situations they might be dealing with. So yeah, last year, was it last year? Yeah, it was beginning of last year. I publicly talked about my battles with alcohol abuse and the breakdown of my marriage. And it was very difficult, not only to share that, but to actually go through that personally. But it's actually been very liberating. I'm recording a podcast after you and I get done here called The Truth Shall Set You Free. And the more honest that we can be with ourselves and surround ourselves with people who are honest with us, that could be your spouse or your friends, relatives, colleagues, coworkers, employees, clients, etc., the better off you're going to be. And it's not always comfortable to hear your spouse say, hey, you're not doing what you should be doing. And we naturally get defensive, but that's the kind of people I want in my life. And so when I feel discomfort because somebody called me out on my BS, yeah, it's not enjoyable, but it's also an indicator that this is a person who truly loves me. When I started talking about my alcohol abuse, I had people in my life who said, yeah, we knew something was going on. I'm like, you knew something was going on, but we didn't talk about it? You didn't bring it up? No, because I didn't know how to bring it up. I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't want to make it weird. I was kind of uncomfortable about it. I'm like, oh, got it. Okay, so you didn't care about me enough to address it with me. And I'm not blaming them. Please, I don't want anybody to misunderstand. It's not their responsibility to do that. It's my responsibility to ensure. Well, let me back up. Maybe they do have some responsibility to do that. If they're my friend, if they say they're my friend, then yeah, they do have a responsibility to do that. It's like a husband saying, well, I don't have a responsibility to be faithful to my wife. No, that's your wife. You committed to be faithful to her. So yeah, you do have some responsibility to that. But again, that doesn't absolve me of my own personal decisions. It's not an either or, it's an and. I could have been doing better, and the people in my circle could have called me on it. And I found that to be true. If I really care about somebody, then I'm willing to risk, in some instances, the relationship in order to make sure I tell the person the truth, the thing that individual needs to hear so they can improve and develop.
Yeah, 100%. We tend to not want to stick ourselves out there, right? When we're trying to bring correction to a friend because we don't want to be judgmental or we don't want to. But honestly, like if I've got a booger on my nose, I want somebody to tell me so I can wipe it off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I'm a good friend, I'll do that, and I'll do it in the context of friendship, not tearing somebody down.
Right. And you exactly. You can still be empathetic. I think there's this movement of people who will say, well, you know, that they just needed to hear it, and that's just the way I am. So that's just what I'm going to say. And if they don't like it, that's on them. I don't really think that's being a friend either. I mean, we can be empathetic. We can cater and customize our delivery to an individual that we love and care about in a way that's going to be conducive to growth. If you're just there to bash and beat somebody up, or yeah, sure, maybe you're being truthful, but you're also being an asshole. And that's not conducive to their growth and development. So we should definitely be aware of how we're saying things and how we're communicating these truths.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. So let's talk a little bit about alcohol itself, man. How did you realize that you were in over your head and you needed some help to get out of that situation?
Oh, my wife told me she wanted a divorce. I wish I could say I came to some, cathartic revelation on my own. I didn't. She told me she wanted a divorce, and that was the driving factor. So, yeah, when you get slapped in the face with something like that, proverbially, I don't want to say that she slapped me in the face. I'm not saying that. But the proverbial slap in the face, yeah, that wakes you up pretty quickly. In fact, I don't know if I was drunk, but I had been drinking when she told me that. So that's sobered me up real quick when she told me that. And sometimes that's what it takes. It's unfortunate that a lot of the times we can't just realize it on our own. We have to wait for somebody to share something, or something catastrophic needs to happen. Like you get a DUI or kill somebody. That didn't happen, by the way. Or your wife tells you she wants to leave you, or you get into some legal or financial trouble. It doesn't have to happen that way, but a lot of the times we put the blinders on. And again, we fool ourselves into believing we're doing better than we really are. And that's what I did. When I was abusing alcohol, I told myself, like, oh, you're still making good money. The podcast is still growing. You're still doing awesome. The family's together. Things are firing. And then when the curtain is pulled back, you realize they're not firing as well as you thought they were. And that was a delusion on my part. It's like, I think Warren Buffett said something in the context of investing, but he said, when the tide goes out, everybody sees who's naked. And that was in relation to investing, but it's true in my scenario too. When the tide rolls out, you can see who's naked. You can see who's exposed. You can see who's there and who's not there, And I was a guy who wasn't there, and I thought for the longest time that I had things figured out, and clearly I didn't.
One of the things I tell guys who are going through divorce, and I want to kind of run through it real quick and then tell me if you saw this true as well, is divorce will then, again, reveal, right? That whole process reveals, oh, she wants a divorce. I need to change. So I always tell guys, change for you, not for her, because whether or not your marriage works, you need to change so that you can handle the process. Would you say that's what it was like for you?
Yeah. Changing for her is nothing but manipulation. So if there's a guy who's listening right now who's thinking, well, maybe he's in a divorce, maybe he's in a separation, whatever. And he's thinking, well, I'm going to show her. I had a guy the other day email me or write down a question. He was like, hey, I really want to show her and prove to her that I'm worthy of her love, or something like that. Like, that's not a great way to approach it, because if that's how you're approaching it, I'm going to prove her. I'm going to show to her how much she means to me. I'm going to show and tell her how much I'm going to change. Then what you're going to do is you're going to manipulate the situation. And it's not going to feel like manipulation. You're going to start buying her gifts. You're going to do all the projects around the house and do the honeydew. You're also going to turn into a yes man. You're going to lose your balls. You're going to lose your spine. And ultimately it becomes repulsive to a woman as opposed to attractive. So I did that. I'm not saying I didn't. I did. I was scrambling. I'm like, how do I save my marriage? It's an 18-year marriage. How do I save my marriage? I'm running the risk of losing time with my children, losing the woman I've been married to for 18 years, financial, consequences. There's a lot going on here that I need to be very, very aware of. So scramble. And I did everything for her, and it was manipulation. I hate to say that it was, because it didn't feel like that at the time. But now that I look back on it after 12 months, 15, 18 months, I can say, yeah, I was trying to win her back to get her behavior to change based on my own. And when I started to improve myself, put the booze down, go to the gym, work more on my self-development, get back to my battle planning stuff that I've been doing. This is my system that I use on a daily basis for the right reason, which is purely self-development. Not for anybody else, not for you, not for my wife, not for my kids, not anybody else, just purely because I personally want to be a better human being. That's when things began to change. And look, I'm not going to tell you that if you go to work on yourself, that if you do it for the right reasons, that your wife's going to come back. She may not. And in my case, she didn't. So that marriage is done. That chapter is closed. But I actually got to close the book because I began to work on myself. And I'm in another relationship. And it's a healthy, good relationship because I've learned a lot and I'm taking responsibility for the way that I showed up. And I continue to work on myself, not for her, but for me. And the result is that her and I have a better relationship. So the results will take care of themselves if you do the right thing for the right reasons.
Yeah, 100%, man. Ryan, I know that you've got, you interview on your podcast, Do Whatever Man podcast, some of the best, right? Like if you have like a laundry list of some of the best men in the world, those are the guys you're talking to. What kind of relationships do you have with any of these guys? Are any of these guys speaking into your life and encouraging you beyond just the 1 hour conversation you have? Or what does that look like?
Yeah, a lot of them. I've had some amazing guests on the podcast, like you said, Jocko Willink, Tim Kennedy, Tim Tebow, Terry Crews, Ben Shapiro, Matthew McConaughey. Some of, like you said, the elite of the elite, the top of the top. And I'm not saying their worth as human beings. I'm saying how good they are in their specific field or their specific skill set. And a lot of these guys, yeah, I do have conversations with and have become friends. One in particular is a man by the name of Granger Smith. A lot of people know who Granger is. A lot of people don't. He's a country music artist. He actually just finished up his very last country music tour because he's focusing on his Christian ministry. But very, very popular, gave that side of things up or pulled back drastically so that he could focus on what he thought was important. I respect him for that. But this is a man who, in my lowest of lows, would call, would text, would reach out to me, would communicate with me. Jocko has become a bit of a friend. Guys like Cam Haynes, John Dudley. I've got even Tim Tebow. I bet if I message, I don't want to make it sound like I'm friend. A lot of people will. My friend, Tim Tebow. Right. He's not my friend, okay? But if I message Tim, he would probably respond back to me and ask me how things were going. Now, are we friends? I wouldn't say we're friends. I want to be honest, but we're friendly. And these are guys who I admire and respect. And some of them I've got on my phone and others I don't. But man, to the degree that I can tap into these guys and what they know, I'm going to take advantage of that. You better believe.
Yeah, for sure. How about just the regular guys that are in your life? Do you have a good circle of guys that you that walk you through, just being a man? Do you have a good brotherhood around you?
Yeah, I want to say this first, though. You say the regular guys. Everybody's a regular guy. Like, I need to be very, very clear about that because every once in a while I have somebody reach out and say, hey, you should have regular guys on the podcast. David Goggins is a regular guy, okay? I'm just telling you. He's a regular guy. He deals with bullshit and he deals with baggage and he's probably a hard person to, I know because he said he's a hard person to be around. He's a hard person to live with. He beats himself up. He's got physical conditions and things that he's dealing with. Like everybody that I've talked to is a regular guy who's doing extraordinary things. So please, and I'm not saying this to you, I'm saying that anybody who listens, like stop putting these guys on pedestals. Don't put Tim Tebow on a pedestal. He's a regular guy. He's doing some phenomenal things. Tim Kennedy, phenomenal things. Ben Shapiro, Matthew McConaughey, Terry Crews, these guys I just listed. They are doing phenomenal things, but they're also regular guys. And just because you don't see the battles that they're dealing with doesn't mean they don't have them. They're there, they exist. I just want to be very clear about that. Now, in the spirit of what you're asking, yeah, I have friends, of course. I have friends, I have colleagues, I have guys in our exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council. And what I'm looking for in a relationship is not a yes man, because it's easy to be surrounded, especially when you have some level of success, to be surrounded by guys who will tell you how great you are and tell you how wonderful you are and all the good things you're doing and how many people you're helping. And I had all of that. I still have all of that. What I'm looking for is somebody who believes in me, but also is willing to say what needs to be said. One man that comes to mind is a guy in our Iron Council who's been with us for years and years. His name is Alan Placer. I know James Percival is another one. I know that these two men in particular love what we're doing. They support what we're doing. They believe wholeheartedly in our mission and in me, and yet they never pull punches. They'll come at me hard, and I don't like it. Every time they do, I'm like, ugh. My first reaction is like, you asshole. And then my second reaction is like, maybe he's right. Maybe you ought to listen, because I know they have my best interest at heart. So, yeah, we've got millions of people who tune in. I've got thousands of people who are engaged in what we're doing, and I've got dozens of people who I'm connected with, and probably a handful of guys who I could say that guy actually counts because he cares about me. We have a deep relationship, and he's willing to say what needs to be said.
Yeah, he's done the work to earn the right to do that too, That's
true. I mean, how often is unsolicited advice appreciated, right? It's not. But a guy like Alan or Jane, like these guys have my back. I know they do. They stepped up and did things in our organization when I wasn't there, when I was absent because of my own personal struggles. So there's a lot of events and situations and circumstances that took place where they stepped up and proved to me, because I saw how loyal they were, not necessarily to me. I don't expect loyalty, but they were loyal to the mission and they believe in me. And so, yeah, they earned a seat at my table. And my table isn't better than your table. I'm not saying that. It's just my table. I care more about my table than I care about your table, right? As do we all. So I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying my table's important to me, and they've earned a seat at the table.
Awesome. So, Ryan, let's talk about the Order of Man, the whole movement as a whole. Where did this thing come from? Why did you decide that it needed to be you that did this?
Because I needed help. That's it. It was selfish, man. Like, I didn't start Order of Man with some desire to, like, I don't know, build this global men's movement that would spur other movements like your own and other people. I didn't do it for that reason. I did it because I wanted to have conversations with guys I was inspired by. And I had another podcast prior to the Order of Man podcast called Wealth Anatomy. So my previous occupation was financial services. So I was helping dentists, chiropractors, physicians, veterinarians with their financial planning. And I started a podcast to help these guys understand more about investments and insurance. And it did really well, but I realized quickly that I liked podcasting. I just didn't want to have that conversation. So I thought, maybe I should start a podcast about being a better father, being a better husband, learning how to develop a career, learning how to grow a movement, to be more influential, to be a better leader. And so that's why I started Order of Man in March of 2015. So just under 9 years ago. And I realized very, very quickly, because of the amount of excitement and interaction, that this is something that men wanted. And then you can look back now over 9 years and see how many people are in this quote unquote men's movement or men's space. And I'm not going to say I'm responsible for all of that, but we had a major part to play in the rise of the men's movement and why you're hearing this message in the masses. I mean, it's hit mainstream now, through guys like Jordan Peterson. And when he was doing lectures, we were talking about masculinity to the masses. Guys like Andrew Tate, who I think have some good information, but maybe misdiagnose or maybe even misprescribe the solution. But these are all people who are in the mainstream having conversations based on what we've built over the past 9 years. It's pretty incredible to see.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. Andrew Tate is a great example of somebody who I'm like, man, like, you get on his website and you read like his 41 tenets or whatever. I'm like, I agree with every one of those, but everything else he says, I'm just like, man, you gotta chill.
Well, he's also a marketer, and so you need to realize who people are. Like, if you know who people are, then you can see what their intentions are. And he is a marketer, and so he's trying to appeal to the masses. And nobody's perfect either. Like, there's no savior. There is one savior, and it isn't us. And so what I try to do is take a guy like Andrew Tate and learn what I can from somebody like him. And then all of the stuff that I think is dangerous or destructive or not helpful, and just leave that alone. It's kind of like a la carte or a buffet. It's like, pick what you want. It's not a doctrine, right? It's not the gospel. It's order of man. And so there might be 70 or 80% of the things that you believe in, and 30% you don't. So do you throw the baby out with the bathwater? No. You just exercise some discernment. So I look at a guy like Andrew Tate and I'm like, yeah, the guy's kind of a fool when it comes to relationships and adding value into people's lives, but his diagnosis of what's happening in society, specifically to men, is pretty accurate. So I'll take that, but I'll leave the garbage and the nonsense that I'm not interested in. It's a buffet. You get to choose what information you want. And everybody, I think, has something to be learned from, and everybody has some stuff that, may not serve you, including myself. So you have to choose. You're the consumer. You decide. It isn't on me to get 100% right for you. It's on you to figure out what information you want and what quantity and dosage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even a guy like Jordan Peterson, like that guy doesn't appeal to everybody. I made a comment the other day. He's really, really good at saying in 2,000 words what somebody could say in 20. Like I'm not bashing the guy. I think he's doing some phenomenal things. I just don't want to hear 2,000 words. I want 20. And so that's better for me. Is it right or wrong? No, it's better for me. And it's my job as the consumer of information to figure out what's going to be best for me and my goals, my desires, and my pursuits.
Yeah, I love Jordan Peterson, and I listen to his podcast, especially when he has a guest on, to learn how not to do an interview.
He's a horrible interviewer. Like he
asks the question and answers it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, are you interviewing the guy or are you just using him as a sounding board? But again, he's got tens, if not hundreds of millions of people listening to him. So there's something to be said for that. But yeah, he's not a great interviewer. He's actually very, very bad at interviewing other people.
Right. But it is fun. It is, and there is good information there that I really appreciate. So
there is, absolutely.
Like you said, we'll eat that, like the old cow will eat the hay and spit out the sticks,
There you go. I like that analogy.
Yeah. So Ryan, you are in Utah now, right? You were in Maine for a little while, and then I'm assuming you moved out to be closer to the family.
Moved out of Maine? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
So I'm from Utah, and then I moved to Maine, and I lived there for 4 years. And then when this whole thing went down, both her and I moved back. I don't have family in Utah. She does. But we both felt like this would be a better environment for our kids given the circumstances.
Yeah, that makes sense. So
that's my goal. My goal is to make sure they have what they need. Like I want to make sure they're okay. I want to make sure they have the support. I mean, I don't have any contact with my in-laws, but they're good people and they're great grandparents and uncles and aunts. And so I want my kids around them, even though I don't have access to them or a relationship with them. Like, it's not about me. It's the decision I made was for my kids.
Yeah. That is important for them to have that community around them as well. So how often do you get to see your kids?
Oh, we have 50-50 custody. So I see them. I actually see them just about every day. Even when technically it's not my day, I might still see them at one of their sports or dance recitals, or, pick them up for, a little drink run. Like we'll go get a soda or whatever. Like I see them just about every day. And if I don't, I'm still communicating with them, so texting and calling. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not obviously as frequent as it was when they were with me full time, but yeah, I see my kids all the time. It's crucial to me. And we arranged that to make sure that was the case.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's the best approach that you could have in that situation.
For the kids,
so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about this because I know that I loved the podcast episode that you did with your son talking about bagging the moose in Maine. Tell me a little bit about that story if you could.
Yeah, so when we were in Maine, Maine has a lottery system for drawing out for the moose hunt. And there's guys that have been putting in for 20, 25, even 30 years that hadn't drawn out yet. And it was our third year of putting in for the moose hunt, and I drew out. And the way that the main moose hunt works is that you can have what they call a sub-permittee. So I was the permittee. I was the one who had the permit, the actual tag. But you can have a sub-permittee, and that's one individual that you can hunt with that also carries a rifle that can shoot as well. So there's two of you. Because the way they figure it, if it's a lottery system, it's once, maybe twice in a lifetime. They want you to be successful, and they don't want wounded animals. So they allow two people to hunt. So my son, he was 13 or 14 at the time. He was my sub-permittee. Yeah, and so we went out. The first day I saw a decent moose, a really good moose. I probably would have shot it on the first day, but he wasn't there because he had a football game, I believe. And so he said to me, he's like, Dad, if you see a Maine state record, you can shoot it, but anything else you can't, because he wanted to be there. And I said, okay, that's fair. And so I could have shot this moose at, I think he was like 100 yards or so, but I decided to wait because I wanted him there. And then he got out there. We saw a decent moose the first day he was there, but we never could get on a shot on it. And we saw some others, but we passed on. But it was unfortunate because we passed on those, and then for 3 days we saw nothing, literally nothing. It was just bad. I'm like, oh boy. And then the last day, long story short, we saw a moose, and him and I shot it, and the moose dropped. And it was funny because he started to run up to it, and both me and my guide were like, no, stay, wait, yelling at him. And so he stopped. We're like, come back. Like, that could be a wounded animal, and a dangerous one. A moose is a very dangerous animal, especially if it's wounded. And so he came back, and we waited, and we walked up there. When we started walking up there, a bunch of moose got up and ran away. I'm like, oh no. And we thought it had got up and run away, that maybe we hadn't made a fatal shot on it. So we're walking, and I'm looking for blood, trying to find it, and kind of moving towards where I think I shot it. And he's like, Dad, there it is. And sure enough, it was there. It was just laying down dead. And when we saw it, I mean, we turned, we locked eyes, we gave each other the biggest hug. It was such a cool moment that him and I could go out there and get the job done. And the moose was over 900 pounds. And, he had a 4 foot, literally it was 4 feet across how wide his rack was. And I think we got 450 pounds of meat from that moose that obviously we're still eating today. But yeah, it was such a great experience. I loved it. I'll never forget that hunt.
That's awesome. I have a friend whose brother got a moose and had lots of meat, and, it's a friend of a friend, and it's like, here, you can have. So I got a couple of moose steaks just a couple of months ago, and I'm like, man, this is awesome. I know what Ryan's eating right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Between that, like last night, or was it last? No, it was the night before. I made some venison stir fry because I've got a bunch of whitetail meat in the freezer. And yeah, I would say about 70 to 80% of my meals are from wild game, whether it's pig or deer or moose or, fill in the blank with whatever animal we decide to shoot. 70 to 80% of what we eat is from stuff that we harvested.
That's awesome. I think people just aren't connected to the food supply, right? They don't know what food is like. And until you taste something that you grew yourself, or the person who grew it, or you hunted it yourself, it's completely different than the junk you get at the superstore,
People are retarded. I mean, honestly, like I've had so many times, like I've posted a picture of a deer or a moose that I shot or something, and people are like, oh, I can't believe it. Oh, you killed a beautiful animal. I'm like, I know they're beautiful. Like, I have no doubt. Like, I watch them. I engage with them. I remember one encounter I had, I was sitting at, I think I was at sub 15 yards or less to this beautiful mule deer in Arizona. And him and I were just locked at each other, just staring at each other for 2 minutes till he busted and ran out of there, and I never had a shot on him. I know more about being connected with the wild animals and the environment than 99% of the vegan so-called environmentalists out there, because I'm in it. I'm immersed. You know what else I do? I pay to make sure conservation is a priority and takes place. You know what else I care about? Making sure that we have the food and the rain and the water and the resources for our wild game so I can go back out there next year and have a successful hunt. I care about that. So when these, crybabies come on to social media posts and are like, I can't believe you'd kill that innocent animal. I'm like, well, what do you, like, do you eat at McDonald's? They're like, yeah. Okay, well, what's the difference? Well, they were raised to be killed. You're an idiot. I'm sorry. No, I'm not even sorry. You're an idiot. If you think that you going down and wolfing down a McDonald's burger, which I don't even know how real is anymore, or a Burger King burger, or getting your meat at the grocery store at Walmart is somehow more moral than me going out to hunt, like I have nothing else to say to you. You're a freaking moron. And I'm just not interested in having a conversation with you until you can learn that your food source is actually worse than my food source. Not only are the animals treated more poorly, the nutritional value is significantly diminished. And I'm actually the one contributing to the environment because I'm engaged in it and you're not. And you're crying from the sideline about what you'd like to see happen when you're not even willing to put any money or effort towards improving the environment. I don't play that game.
Yeah, the comment section on the internet in general is just usually full of losers, I think. So I think people love to run their mouth and have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, and so you have to, as a man, discern that. Like, is this a moron, an ignorant moron worthy of your conversation? 90% of the time, no. So I've gotten better at leaving it alone. Like, just keep talking. Everybody will see how dumb you are, and I don't need to say anything.
I love it. Ryan, I wanted to talk to you about your book a little bit, Sovereignty. Love the book. Love the concept. Maybe you could help us understand what it means for a man to be sovereign.
Sovereignty is liberty. I mean, it's the ability, if we strip everything else away, to do what you want, when you want, why you want, without really worrying about anybody's opinion or your financial abundance or, whatever. It's just the ability to make decisions that you want to make. And too often we don't. We're beholden to our employers with the golden handcuffs of some sort of, miraculous retirement account or some gold band at the end of 50 years saying, congratulations, like the little gold star that you get when you're in third grade. And people are like, oh, I did it. You did nothing. You squandered your life. You had so many goals and dreams and desires, and you squandered it for a gold watch, just like the third grader gets a gold star from his teacher. We do it with our government. Well, the government will take care of us. And show me where the government has actually taken care of us and done a good job. Well, that's because we need more government. Sure, that makes sense. Or even our wife, like we expect our spouse or significant other to do all the work and to make sure that we're happy. Oh, she needs to make sure I'm happy. We might not vocalize that, but we act as if it's her responsibility. It isn't. Or another one I see is guys who are severely obese, guys who are struggling with their health and their fitness, and they have to take, 17 pills a day at $500 a month, and they think, well, this is just life. No, that's not life. It's not how life is supposed to be. What can you do? People say, well, the medical advances save more people. Sure, I'll give credit where credit is due, but also we know more about nutrition and how to eat and how to fuel our bodies and how to train and how to do all the right things. So yeah, sure, the medical community is life-saving, and it's keeping people alive who, this is controversial, maybe shouldn't be alive, so that's controversial. But also, like, we rely on it as a crutch, and we think that, oh, they'll save me if I do something wrong or I don't take care of myself. That's not liberty. That's not sovereignty. If you're strapped up to your eyeballs in debt and you can't quit your job, or you can't go start that side business or that side hustle or the business that you've always dreamed of because you have to make a mortgage payment, are you telling me you're sovereign? Or are you a slave to the lending company who happens to carry the note on your home? Not even your home, the note on their home. And that's not sovereignty. Sovereignty is about being financially prosperous. It's about being spiritually connected. It's about being physically healthy, mentally and morally strong and righteous and virtuous. And then what that does is it creates opportunities for us to live our more fulfilling lives and ultimately to serve other people. And that's my job, is to serve other people. And I realize that there's an inextricable connection between my ability to take care of myself and to serve other people. They're not mutually exclusive. They're connected, and I need to make sure that I'm doing both, and that requires me to be sovereign.
I love it. Yeah, the book is excellent. If anybody's interested in reading that, what's the best way for them to connect with that?
Amazon or wherever, wherever you get books, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. I don't know where else you get books, but wherever you can find a copy of Sovereignty. We actually might have some, I think we do. We have some paperback copies, signed paperback copies in my store too. That's store at store.orderofman.com. You can find some signed copies there.
Awesome. You could probably get that cool hat that you're wearing too.
Yeah.
At the store, right?
Yeah. If you like it, I'll send you one. Just give me your address. I'll send you one. I've got this one and I've got a green one too. I'll get one sent out to you.
Awesome. I'll send you my address later. That's awesome. Very cool.
Cool.
I was thinking, I don't know if your camera shows it in reverse. When I'm looking at you, it shows the right way. But if it shows it in reverse on yours, it says moo instead of OOM.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Guys like to joke about that. They say it's the moo hat is what they call it, jokingly. So yeah. Or OOM, Order of Man. I've had people, I believe it's Africa or a dialect in Africa where it actually means uncle, which I kind of like as well. OOM, uncle. That uncle who steps up, who maybe doesn't have to and supports you and teases you, but also shows you new things and introduces you to new environments. Like I kind of like that as well.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, that actually brings up a cool thought. I know so many young men, so many boys who don't have anybody in their life. They don't have a dad figure. They don't have a masculine role model. How can we help them?
Step up. I mean, you can drive down to your community center right now and say, hey, can I coach? We're in the spring, so what do we got coming up? Baseball, lacrosse, soccer. If you're talking about, ladies, you got softball, soccer, volleyball's a winter sport. But like if you go down to your community center and say, hey, I'd like to coach, they'll find a spot for you. If you go to the high school, maybe not the high school, but there's plenty of extracurricular activities, whether it's coaching or, one thing I used to do is I used to work for a nonprofit organization that would go in and teach the kids who had restitution or detention hours. They could actually have that reduced in half if they spent half the time. So if they had 5 restitution hours, they could do 2.5 hours with us. And we were teaching life skills from finances to personal communication to starting businesses to being physically healthy. And so they'd spend time with us and they only had to do half the time that they would do if they had to do in detention or restitution. There's programs out there. There's things out there. If you really want to get involved, here's another thing you could do. A lot of the kids that your children are hanging out with don't have dads around. And so you can be example to them. Invite them. If you're going skiing, invite them. If you're going to the basketball game, invite them. Bring them into your circle. I don't want my kids going into their circle because that's not a conducive and healthy environment for them. But I can bring other people into my circle and I can show them what a real healthy relationship with their father looks like. And that's our responsibility. And so when you look at what your responsibility as a man is, I believe that our ultimate objective is to serve God. And then from there, it's to make sure that we're the strongest vessel that we can be to fulfill that mission. Once you have that dialed and locked to a degree, then you can start trickling that outwards, and that goes to your kids. That's your first responsibility. My responsibility is not first and foremost to my neighbor's kids. That's their responsibility. My responsibility is first and foremost to my children. But once I have that dialed in and locked in, now I can expand that circle and I can start influencing their friends. And then I can start influencing people in the community. And then I can run for politics or office or, be a more contributing member of society and start helping not only my neighborhood kids, but my community kids. And it just gets bigger and bigger from there. Once you prove to yourself, you have the aptitude of dealing with your current circle. Again, you, your kids, your neighbor, your community, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, if anybody's like, oh, I really want to help kids, I don't know how, just drive down to your community center today and tell them, like, you have a skill. The other thing, if you're not going to coach, there's another skill set that you have. Maybe it's photography, maybe it's hiking, maybe it's geology, maybe it's firearms. Go to the community center and say, hey, I'd like to do a 4-week course on geology. We have some beautiful mountains around here and I'd like to take people around and show them what it's about. Or, hey, I've been practicing martial arts for 15 years. I'd like to offer my service 1 night a week for 8 weeks to anybody who wants a beginner course in self-defense for young women. Whatever your thing is, go to your community center and tell them that's what you want to do, and they will bend over backwards because they need people like us. They want people like us. It's just our responsibility to exert ourselves.
Excellent, man. Have you ever thought about running for office? You kind of mentioned that in there. Is that something that might be on the horizon in the future?
I mean, I thought about it, but honestly, like I feel like I have a bigger impact where I am. At this point, I'm not going to rule that out at any point in the future. Well, I don't think I need to rule it out, but it isn't on my radar. I feel like I can pour into my business. I feel like I have a significant reach with my business, and then I feel like I really want to just serve my community. I want to help my friends or my kids' friends. I want to be involved in coaching sports. I'm just getting signed up for coaching my son's soccer team, trying to figure out if my daughter has a father-daughter dance thing that I could get involved with. Like I really want to be there for my kids and for the community kids. And if it turns into something outside of that, sure, maybe down the road, but that's not a focus of mine right now.
Yeah, I've been approached in the past by people asking for like a town council or something like that, and I'm always like, I see the way you guys act at
They're
your
assholes.
town council meetings. I don't
really
want,
are.
I don't have time for that.
They act like they're better than everybody else. They think that once they get on council, you know, they're the wizard, you know, behind the curtain that gets to make all the rules. It's like I think I'm not going to say I don't like those people because I know some of them individually and I like them as people, but as council men and women, I don't like them. I don't know if it's politics that corrupts them or puts them on their high horse, but as council people, no, they not interested in that.
Yeah, that's the way I kind of feel about it. Well, Ryan, I know that we've got to wrap up our conversation because you've got another podcast coming up. So I like to ask all my guests a couple questions. The first one is, what does it take to be a man?
I think I made this post on Twitter or X the other day, and I said that a boy, the difference is measured this way: a boy consumes more than he produces, and a man produces more than he consumes. If I strip everything else, and I spent a lot of time thinking about this, if I strip everything else away, that's it. You're a man when you learn to produce outside of yourself. Everything else is just selfish. And I'm not saying you can't be selfish, but if you are selfish, you need to find a way to produce more than you consume. Like I like to buy things. I like to do things for myself. I like to take time for myself, but I also give back to charity. I also get involved in my kids' sports teams and serve the young men and women in my community. There's other things that I'm doing because I'm a man. And my responsibility is to produce more than I'm consuming. I need to be a value add, an asset to the community, not a liability. So I've answered that in an infinite number of ways over almost a decade now. But I think at the end of the day, if you're producing more than you consume, you're on the path of being a man. And by the way, you notice that's not age restrictive. I know 15-year-olds who are producing more than they consume, and I would call them men above a 40-year-old that's still in mommy and daddy's basement, living rent-free, you know, hoping that their parents take care of all their bills and they don't have to go out and exert themselves in any way. That might be man-aged, but that's not manly behavior, and all of us know that.
Yeah. Good answer, man. I appreciate that. All right, Ryan, let's say you can get your hands on a flux capacitor and you plug it into your Scout, you know, and so you can go back in time. I had to mention the Scout because that's the coolest. You still have it?
I do. Well, it's being restored right now, so I don't have it in my possession, but I still do have it. It's being worked on.
Awesome. So you get the flux capacitor in the Scout, and you can go back in time about 30 years or so and talk to 10-year-old Ryan. What do you want to tell him?
Man, that's tough. A lot of the times, like I have answers for that, but I don't know. A lot of the times you just have to experience life. Like you just have to get kicked in the dick sometimes. I hate that that's the answer, but even if I told the younger version of myself what he should be doing, he wouldn't listen to me anyways. Like he's got to get kicked in the balls. So I think what I would probably say is, you know, learn to roll with the punches as they come. And one thing I spent a lot of time focusing on in the beginning of this year as we winded down 2023 is a man's ability to adapt and evolve to circumstances, whether self-inflicted or external circumstances beyond his control, is something crucial that every man needs to learn how to develop. And when you do, then you're able to roll with those punches and you're able to take those challenging circumstances, devastating circumstances, even in stride and move forward. So I guess that's what I would say is roll with the punches, take the information you get, even in the form of, horrible situations, and learn, grow, and evolve from them.
Awesome. All right, Ryan, what is your best advice for the men that are listening today?
I think what I would say is, here's something a little bit different. Plan your day. Just plan your day. Do it every day. Just plan your day. Most men don't do that. We wake up and we're beholden to our boss because we need to be into work at a certain time. And, we don't get up and go to the gym, and we don't think about what we need to accomplish that day or what would mark that day as a success. We don't evaluate at the end of the day and ask ourselves what we did and what we could do better. It's hard, especially for high achieving men, to take time away from the achievement, the activity side of life for the reflection and analytical side of life. I'm one of those guys, but I'll tell you what, if I take even just 30 minutes every single morning and map out my day, it's so much more productive and intentional than it is if I just get up and just bust my ass for however many hours I'm supposed to. That's exhausting. It's very inefficient because you don't know what's working and what isn't, and it very seldom produces the type of results that you're capable of. So let's be a little bit more intentional. Let's plan out our days. What do I need to get done? What's important? If I look back on the day, what would make it a success? Where am I going to do what? Plan that out a little bit more. And then at the end of the day, do a little recap. Hey, what did I get done? What didn't I get done? What needs to go on tomorrow? What can I do better tomorrow? How can I show up? If I didn't perform, why? And what should I do differently in my behavior tomorrow so that I can perform better today? Those are things that I've been doing. And I've noticed that every time I deviate from that, I produce either less than favorable or even in some cases catastrophic results. So getting back to the systems are inevitably going to produce results for you.
Which I think leads us to a great place to close, because I know you've got a tool that can help men with that, the battle plan.
Yeah,
Could you just tell me how guys can connect with that?
Yeah, I mean, I've got it right here because I use it. This is not a tool I just sell. Like, this is a tool I actually use and developed over 9 years of using it now. It's called a battle planner. You can pick it up in the store at store.orderaman.com, or there's an app, the 12-week battle planner, both on Android and Apple. So there's an app available if you'd rather do it digitally. But yeah, this is a tool that I use every single day that will help you map out your day, help you plug in what you need to plug in, and at the end of the day, help you just reflect on what needs to be done. So you're going to be a lot more efficient. And I don't care if it's this. I mean, I'd like it to be this, and I think this works because I've been using it for 9 years. And people say, well, it didn't work because look at your life. Well, that's because I wasn't doing it. It wasn't because it doesn't work. It's because I wasn't utilizing it. So you go back to the drawing board and you have a system in place and you actually work the system. It's amazing that you produce results. So yeah, that's the battle planner.
Awesome. Yeah. So if the guys want to connect with that, we'll put the link to Order a Man in the show notes and you can go check it out. But Ryan, awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with me today, man.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate the opportunity. I know, like I said earlier, it's been a long time in the works. I'm glad we could finally make it happen. And you asked some really, really good questions. And so I was honored to be on your show today.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you, man. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Right on. Thanks.
Ryan, I appreciate having you on the podcast. I appreciate your insights. And I hope the guys connect with the work that you're doing. All you guys listening, thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate you. I hope that we're learning some good stuff here. Please leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Let's spread the word. If this is a podcast that resonates with you, let's share it. Let's get the word out there. Anyway, guys, as always, I love you, I'm proud of you, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Manlihood ManCast. If you want to be a better husband, father, leader, a better man, you need to join our private Facebook group, the Manlihood ManCast. Join today. Please help us out with a like, comment, share, and subscribe. And check us out at manlihood.com.